Welcome to the Stop Over Drinking and Start Living podcast, where high-achieving, goal-oriented rebel women come to learn how to live a vibrant and fulfilling life without requiring alcohol to get through it. No labels, no judgments, no saying you'll never drink again. Just real proven methods to help you stop rebelling against yourself with alcohol so you can drink less and do more. I'm your host, Angela Mascenik. Let's dig in. Welcome to episode 312, Decisions Part 2. Learn, adapt, and move on. Well, hello, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm really excited about this podcast. I've been thinking about how we make decisions for a while. You guys listened to the podcast, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, that we talked about how we make decisions, right? So evaluating the feelings that are driving our actions of decision making, the impact that fear has on our decision making. And usually if we're making decisions from fear, we might be getting the same results over and over and over again. And there were really good tools that I shared that helped you slow down, take a beat, and pause and do some workshopping of your own thought process before you make bigger decisions. And that's what we talked about in that podcast. So I really want you to listen to that podcast if you haven't listened to it yet. So that is part 1 of this 2-part decision-making podcast episodes. We will link it up in the show notes, but please do yourself a favor. Go back and listen to that first one, and then come back and listen to part 2, which is learning how to adapt and move on after you've made a decision and after you've maybe acted on the decision, right? Or you went out and tried the thing that you wanted to do in that decision that you made. Okay. So a lot of times what happens after we make decisions, sometimes it doesn't work out, right? We make decisions that we now have hindsight and think, I shouldn't have done that. How often have you done that, right? That I shouldn't have done that. Maybe when you're thinking about your relationship with alcohol, you plan for drinks and you overdrink, right? So you planned for 2 drinks and then you had 5 or whatever it is. And you regret that decision and you have a lot of thoughts about it. And I shouldn't have done it that way or blah, 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 right? We have this hindsight, and usually that's negative. It's negative hindsight. And usually that's triggered by us actually doing something. And so I want to break this down in a few different parts. So what happens when you're unhappy with the decision, evaluating your decisions, having your own back, and how to make better decisions going forward. And so when you have goals, you're making decisions, right? You set your goals up and then you are off to the races and you take daily action, you make daily decisions that are ideally supportive of that overall goal that you have, okay? And we're here to talk about our relationship with alcohol. So there's sort of these big overall goal that a lot of people have, especially when you're joining my 6-month coaching program. We have you think about what do you want to achieve at the end of the 6 months? And there's a whole workbook that you get to fill out and helping you visualizing, seeing that ultimate goal that you want to have with alcohol. And then the program helps you every month, every week, every day, make decisions ultimately that helps you achieve that goal. And there's a lot more to it. We look at your thoughts and your feelings, and you get coaching, and you're understanding your own behavior and evaluating and all sorts of things that get you to that end goal. And a lot of times in that process, there's failures, which is 100% normal. It's part of the process, and it's built into the process. It's built into the work that you do inside that program. And I'm just talking generally too, even outside of that program, if you have a goal that you're working on, you need to expect that there's going to be some decisions and failures along the way, okay? But the good news is if you have a failure, or say you make a decision and it doesn't feel right or it wasn't perfect, it means that you're doing something, okay? So that's a good thing. I just want you to remind yourself that you've made a decision and you've taken some action, which is a lot more than most people do, believe me. Okay, so just recognize that. That is a win. You've moved forward. You didn't stay stuck. Okay, so I want you to recognize that you're making decisions, you're moving forward, right? And now we have this amazing gift in the human brain called hindsight, which it lets us evaluate things, which can be a a blessing and a curse at the same time, okay? Sometimes these decisions that we make don't work out in our favor, and that's a good thing because then we get to learn something about it. So if you do make a decision that you're not happy with, we just want to acknowledge that. We want to explore those feelings that you might have around the outcome of a decision that you've made. Okay, so you might have some regret or shame or disappointment, or maybe you're scared because you did it wrong and you don't want to admit it, right? I think a lot of people, who, especially because there's so much shame around alcohol, they say they're going to go do something, right? They make their drink plan and they're off to the races, and then they have a failure, right? They don't want to be judged by other people, especially people in their household and their family, sometimes by me. They want to perform well. They want to be that A student, and they don't want to admit that there has been a sidestep or a failure, right? And so I just want you to explore those feelings, right? Journaling here is helpful. If you are inside one of my coaching programs, doing the evaluation is really helpful so you can get some good awareness about how you are feeling about it. And then we want to normalize those feelings, okay? So anytime that we're trying to go after something new, we have to expect that there's going to be a rainbow of feelings. We're going to have some big wins and some big losses. And anything in between is normal. There's a trade-off, right? You're going after something you currently don't have. And so that's pushing you outside of your comfort zone. And, any feelings that you have around that is absolutely normal. And just because you have feelings, right, around whatever the outcome was that maybe you don't like, doesn't mean that you made the wrong choice. It's just feedback that is trying to get your attention. That's what feelings are. It's feedback. And we need to listen to our feelings more. We don't want to just sweep it under the rug, right? I talk a lot about letting go of the shame that you feel when you have an overdrink. And it's important to not just be like, yep, Angela told me not to beat myself up, so I'm just going to move on. No. Pause. Let yourself explore those feelings. Those feelings have really important information for you if you give yourself enough time to stop and listen to them, okay? So the next step is, after you've made this decision, you've explored, so we're talking about if it's a decision that you made and then you didn't get the outcome that you wanted and you're a little bit disappointed, okay? So you're going to explore your feelings, you're going to normalize those feelings, give yourself some attention that you need, and evaluate that, okay? And then we're going to sort of evaluate your decision that you made. Okay, so we want to be reflective on it. And again, if you're in my coaching program, this is where the evaluations really come in. What worked, what didn't work, what can I do differently next time? That's the structured approach that you want to take when you are evaluating this decision. And I just want to add too, sometimes when we make a decision and we do get the outcome that we want, but we're just like, ugh, I could have handled that better, or, you're feeling off about it, or, say you had a drink plan that had no drinks on your plan. And then you went and you executed that plan, but you ate a bunch of shitty food, or you noticed you're like really anxious or stressed out, or you really felt like you were missing out and, you just were like kind of a hot mess, right? That would be a really good time to evaluate what went well, what didn't, and what you can do differently next time so you can learn about how to better support yourself next time. But again, congratulate yourself for doing it and trying to take some of the right steps in moving forward. Okay, so the structured approach I'm talking about for decisions that you're just like, I don't know, is what worked, what didn't work, what can I do differently next time? Okay. Understanding why you made that decision in the first place is really important. Usually it's probably because you want to drink less, and that's in alignment with your goals, which is always a good thing. That's important to remember, right? And not just kind of sit out in the negative spin of things. And then remembering, sort of like, what was I working with at the time? What didn't I know when I was executing this decision? Okay. And then we just want to learn from the outcome. So if the result isn't what you wanted, or it wasn't the experience you wanted to have, or you drank more than you wanted to, what did you learn about that, right? Like, so what didn't work for you? And what can you do differently next time? That's the most important part, is that you actually learn something from that outcome, okay? And then it's really important that, I know a lot of people get hung up on this, and it's really hard when you are in this place where you didn't get the outcome that you wanted because your feelings are pretty activated, right? You're frustrated or you're disappointed and you're just sick of it, right? Just remember to think about this is the process, right? Just because you're making decisions and you feel good about those decisions at the moment doesn't mean that you're always going to have the outcome you want. So don't be hard on yourself. You want to trust that this is a part of the process. And sometimes we make decisions and they don't give us what we want. And so we learn from it and then we make better decisions that will help us get to where we want to go. Okay. And this kind of leads into having your own back on your decisions. I talk a lot about this, is that you made the best decision that you could have in the time. Okay. I also, like in the part 1 of the decision making podcast, we really got nuanced in how to make decisions. I don't want you to like reflect on all the decisions that you've made in your past, even over drinking decisions, and like go back and be super critical and judge yourself for not slowing down and thinking things through. We don't do that. That is absolutely not helpful. We need to be so self-compassionate. We need to really trust ourselves that we made the best decisions no matter what they were, because those are the decisions that you made. End of story. You have hindsight, which again can be good and bad, right? And we're not going to try to go back in time and say we should have done things differently. That's not what we do. We evaluate what we did, and then we can say, okay, given the information I have today, I can make a new decision. And that is about moving forward. Okay, so don't tell yourself, I mean, you might tell yourself this because we can't always control what we're thinking in the moment, right? We can decide how we want to think after we hear ourselves, but a lot of times you just have a lot of these thoughts that are coming in. They're like, why did I do that? And I shouldn't have done it that way and blah, blah, blah. Well, if you hear yourself saying that, be like, no, I'm going to have my own back on that. I made the decision that I made based on the information I had at the time. And now I have other information and more tools. And so I'm going to make better decisions this time. That's what I think about all of the drinking that I did in the past. You know, I drank a lot and it makes me want to cry thinking about it sometimes. And I know that I didn't have these tools back then. You know, I was influenced heavily to have a very heavy relationship with alcohol. And when I had my little kids back to back, you know, I had my first 2 18 months apart, and then the second 2 were exactly 2 years apart. So that was an intense time period. I didn't know any of this stuff. I didn't know that you could manage your mind. I didn't know how to process feelings. I didn't know how to have agency over myself. I didn't know anything about that, right? I was just functioning how I was taught to function. I was taught from a very young age, since birth, that alcohol was something that you do to manage your life, and that people that didn't drink were boring. And then I grew up and had my own experiences with alcohol and party times and good times, and I was using alcohol to deal with stress. And then when I had these 3 kids and I went back to work full time, like it was compacted with a lot of unmanaged and unregulated feelings. Okay. And I used alcohol a lot to deal with that, especially when the kids were very young. And I'm so glad that I don't do that anymore. And I'm not going to be hard on myself for that, because I did literally use it to help me. And that's the only thing that I knew how to use. Okay. And so I don't want to be mad at myself about that. And I don't want you guys to be mad about yourself and your drinking in your past either. It's important to be aware. It's important to forgive yourself and to not tell yourself a bunch of lies. And it's really important that you have your own back on the decisions that you made in your past or even just yesterday. Okay. You can always make new decisions, right? You don't have to stick with the decision that you made. So when you are evaluating this, be super self-compassionate, be super gentle with yourself, remind yourself of the intentions that you had at the time of that decision. You don't need to second guess yourself, okay, about that past decision. You just decide now, okay, with this new information that I have after I've tried this thing, what do I want to take from this, and what can I do, and what better decisions can I make going forward? So I love this statement. Every decision is an experiment that brings more clarity. I mean, I can't say it better than that, All right. Every decision is an experiment that brings more clarity. So, for a lot of you who have been suffering with overdrinking for a long time, and you're actively working on it right now, okay? So, maybe you're in one of my coaching programs and you're actively trying to cut back. And every time you have an overdrink, that is information. Those decisions are giving you more clarity on what is right for you and what is not. Okay? So, be thankful for those decisions, because if you pay attention to them and you go through this process that I'm talking to you about, evaluating those decisions and learning from them, you will make progress, and it's aligning you towards the relationship with alcohol that you want to have. Okay? You can also look at decisions and help them. It's like they're going to help you inform future decisions that you want to make. Right? So in sort of evaluation process, like I'm recording this during the holiday season, right? And so a lot of you are trying some new things around the holidays and you're like, I'm never doing it like this again. That's information, right? Next year is going to be different, right? That's information. You're deciding how you made a decision, you have an experience and an outcome, and then you're like, okay, I'm not going to do it like this again. That's the process. But you want to remember, right? So pausing and slowing down when you're in sort of the same cycles that you find yourself in throughout the year. Okay, I remember last year I didn't feel awesome about what that experience was like. So this year I'm going to make some different decisions based on that information that I had last year, right? So we all have an opportunity to do this on a daily basis, especially with alcohol. Did alcohol make me feel good yesterday? No. How do I want to shift today to make sure that I do feel good, right? What does that look like for you? How can you shift just a little bit to get more in alignment with your goals based on a decision that you made yesterday? You can get very micro specific, and then you can get really big when you're talking about something like the holiday season or next summer or whatever that looks like for you. Decision making like this is a skill that improves with practice as well. So the more you get aware of how you're making decisions that I talked all about in part 1, and you slow down and you stop being reactive to your decisions and you really think things through, and then you go out and you try some things and you live in those decisions and you evaluate those decisions, this decision-making skill set, sort of like the before and the after, will get refined and improves with a lot of practice. Okay. So for me, when I think about the past 6.5 years since I've been learning some of this stuff and applying this to my own life, like every holiday season is a good example. It gets better because I reflect, I make some tweaks, and then I get to experience what I want to. And, sometimes it's like back and forth, like this year is a very simple holiday season for us. Maybe next year we'll want to do a little bit more, right? But you get like this process gets more intuitive. It gets easier, and you start applying it to like little everyday decisions. You slow down and you pause and you think things through a little bit more. You reflect after that's over a little bit easier, and becomes just sort of natural part of your process. So if it feels clunky to kind of, or time consuming to look at your decisions like this, it's okay. Remember, this is a new skill that you're learning, and it will get easier the more you practice it over time. Okay. So making decisions is big, right? It shapes how we show up in our lives, right? It gives us outcomes. Decisions are huge things to dive into and understand your own decision-making process. Maybe apply this new process that you're learning into your life and see what that is like for you, and evaluate all of it, right? Like you may try some of this and be like, this is ridiculous. Who knows? Like you get to explore that, right? I haven't found that to be the case when people slow down and think things through and they really evaluate, why they're making decisions, and they are focused more on the outcome that they want to have versus like a feeling state. And then they evaluate every step of the way and they learn about themselves. Like it can be a really interesting and fascinating process if you give yourself enough time. You deserve the time it takes to do this because you get one life experience, y'all. I was doing some reflective exercises in my journal this morning, and my initial journal download was a little bit anxious. I didn't really even recognize that I was feeling anxious, but I had like a lot of different thoughts in my head. And I was like, wow, there's an edge right now because there's just like, it's kind of a swirl. And then I practiced this visualization of what's the experience I just want to have today? And the experience I just wanted to have today made me realize like this day that I am in right now is literally my life. And I get to choose how I live my life. And I'm never going to get this day again. I'm never going to get the Friday before Christmas in 2024 back, right? And so how do I want to be today? And I decided I wanted to be joyful, and I wanted to be happy, and I wanted to be thankful, and I wanted to slow down and like really appreciate my Christmas lights and the recipe that I made. And, this is just a once a year, once a moment type moment that we get to experience, right? And it takes being mindful and thoughtful. It really does. Otherwise, our mind gets in the way and we just go on autopilot. And our autopilot is always wanting to protect you. It's going to be inducing a lot of fear and anxious thoughts and overwhelm and telling you a bunch of different shit unless you learn how to manage it. And learning how to slow down and think through your decisions, pausing, reflecting, evaluating, getting curious on both ends before and after helps you have a more intentional experience in your life that you'll remember and be grateful for, instead of just burning yourself out and being on autopilot and then drinking at the end of the day to deal with it all. All right, my friends. So it's work worth doing. And I would love to have you do this with me inside Stop Over Drinking and Start Living, my 6-month coaching program. You will have hands-on support by Coach Steph and I to do this work together with workbooks and worksheets and 2 coaching calls a week and a community that will help you see these things in a different way. And a lot of times getting support and learning these kind of skills is better when you have a guide, have a guide and a coach that can help you with these tools and see things that maybe you haven't seen yet, right? And have that accountability that you're invested in something and you want to do the work and you want to get this outcome and have a different perspective on things, and it'll blow your mind. So anyway, consider joining it. It is open for enrollment until the end of January. You can apply right now and join. It's angelamascenik.com/join SODSL. We kick off January 1st, but we're enrolling all of January, and you won't miss anything if you enroll later. But you'll have a little bit of a head start just getting the basics down with us and throughout January. And then we're going to close it off at the end of January, and we're all going to go through the materials together starting February 1st. So if you've been thinking about it, we're talking about making decisions, I would highly encourage you to apply and put your intentions out there and get the support that you want. All right, my friends, I hope you have a beautiful holiday. You've had a beautiful holiday. And if you haven't yet signed up for Dry January, please do that. You can also sign up for that all month long. You'll have access to everything as soon as you sign up, and you'll have access to it for the whole month of January. So no matter when you sign up in the month of January, you can watch workshops, you can attend a mocktail class, you can attend a live yoga class, you can do a breathwork class, meditation. There's so many fun things that we're doing inside of there. So I'm highly encouraging you to sign up and join the Dry January experience as well. It's free. So maybe you'd like to get a test run of what it's like to be with me and in my spaces. But I'd love to have you there as well. That URL is angelamascenik.com/dry January. Much love to you all, and we'll talk to you soon.